And praise the Lord, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Redemption Church Podcast. Today, I have a very, very special person. She happens to be my girlfriend, my wife, and the mother of my children. I'm glad you're here.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me.
We've been meaning to do this for a while, and we just haven't made it happen, but here we are. Well, there's so much to talk about. I know we live busy lives. You're in school. FYI, my wife is almost done with her BSN program with nursing. She'll be done in just a few short months. And that's how life has been for us our entire marriage, honey. What would you say? 14 years, we have been very busy people.
Yeah, it's been busy, but nothing like the last couple years
And why would you say that?
because we started a church.
I would like to say that I believe we pastor the best church on the planet.
Amen.
They make it easy for us. We are so blessed, so blessed. But even with that, there are challenges. And within all the contexts and conversations about ministry, whether you're pastoring or a small group leader or a preacher, I think that it's vital within all that. If you're married, your marriage has to come first. That is your primary ministry. I don't think a ministry can be, I guess you, if you want to say successful, I don't think a ministry can go very far unless the marriage is intact. I think a marriage, a relationship has the potential of stifling and hindering your potential for God, which is why we tell people be very careful who you choose to marry, because outside of being born again, that's going to be the most important decision you make.
Yeah, I believe that. I think that sometimes, in the exciting phases of getting to know someone and preparing to get married, judgment can be a little clouded. So, unless you have someone that can kind of sit down with you two and talk about maybe weak points and address those things, and to really say, hey, if your spouse or your future spouse does not ever change X, Y, and Z habit or change this part of their personality, can you accept that? Is that going to be something that would hinder your walk with God or the plan that God has for your life?
Right. Because I think a lot of times people marry someone with the mindset that they're going to change them.
Right. Or they have this, I guess, imagination that God is going to change this person. And while God does transform, I think that sometimes we can get caught up in hoping that God does all the work and forget that we're all responsible for our own transformation. As God works in us, we respond in changed habits or changed mindsets and changed actions.
And in that process, if you're the spouse, you're kind of in for the ride, whether you like it or not.
Yes.
And why we're talking about this and why it's so important is because marriage isn't easy.
It's not. Especially with a marriage and ministry, it's not easy. I don't think that anything that is worth having in life or living in, if it's easy, it's not usually too valuable or valued. So I'm not saying that marriage should just be difficult, but I think just like motherhood, just like sometimes some of the best relationships we have in our lives can have seasons of difficulty to work through, and that's what brings the value to the surface, is when you work towards common goals and you have each other's back and you just can form bonds over overcoming difficulties together.
Yeah, the sweetest victories are always going to be the most toughest battles. And marriage is one of those things. It's not meant to be mediocre. I don't think it can last. If you're in it and it's kind of so-so and your marriage is not fulfilling, naturally you're going to seek some type of a reward system outside of that. And that's not the plan or the will of God. Everything that you would want as far as relationship goes, you can find that in your marriage. I preached not too long ago on a Tuesday about the 4 levels of bonding. So you have the serotonin bonding, you have the oxytocin bonding, you have the dopamine bonding. In your marriage and in relationships, you're going to have the oxytocin. You're going to feel in love with each other. You're going to feel the butterflies, the honeymoon. In marriage, and hopefully only in marriage, when there's physical intimacy, obviously there's going to be oxytocin and dopamine. Dopamine's released when you kiss, dopamine's released when you're having physical intimacy. But those two things very much needed. You need the oxytocin, you need the dopamine. God created that in you as a reward system. But the one thing higher than that was the serotonin bonding, which is only released when a couple can work together in purpose. And that's why a lot of affairs happen with coworkers. You know, if you're a nurse, we both are nurses. So I guess that analogy fits us. But whether you work at a bank, whether you work,
I'm sorry, baby. The biggest is vasopressin bond.
I'm sorry, you're right. The vasopressin bonding. Serotonin was the first level.
I had to look it up really quick because it didn't sound.
It didn't sound right. Thank you. And the vasopressin bonding is released. The vasopressin is released when two people work together with a common goal and a common purpose, and they fulfill that thing. They work together to troubleshoot and to overcome. So at work, if you're, a firefighter, officer, whatever it is, you're working with your coworkers, and if they happen to be the opposite sex, there you are working with them, brainstorming with them, troubleshooting things with them, and that forms a bond. Most affairs happen with coworkers. That vasopressin bonding is a powerful thing, and I believe, back to what you said earlier, marriage and ministry is tough, but we don't know any other way because that is our purpose. People that work in ministry together, husband and wife, even with the children, they're usually tighter, right? I mean, I don't think I'm wrong when I say, just from observation, the strongest couples in every church are the couples that are in ministry together.
Yeah. I think that to take this whole conversation about the vasopressin bond and it's focused on working towards a common goal, I think where that can be lost is in marriage, in the hard times when the butterflies are not really, floating around too much and the bills are adding up and the kids are teens and they're acting up and there's money problems or there's church problems, work problems, whatever. It's really hard to see your spouse as anything but part of the problem sometimes if it's not handled properly, if the conversations aren't being had to get to the bottom of it and say, hey, we're on the same team. Let's get back to the basics. We're working towards something. I'm not your enemy. And that bond can't happen unless the marriage is brought down to that level of, hey, we're friends. We have a common goal. I'm not the enemy. You're not the enemy. We're going to work together and see how we can overcome these things. Even if it's a one-sided issue, you can still come together as a team and refuse to blame one another or refuse to be the martyr of the situation, and just remind yourselves daily, sometimes hourly, we're in this together. I am going to be there with him to the very end, till the wheels fall off, come hell or high water. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to stick it out.
And that's so important that your spouse knows that.
Yes.
Because speaking from the man's perspective, I need to know you got my back. Because if I'm not sure you have my back, and let's just say there's coworkers or in a church, other people, let's say other women that are so supportive to me as a pastor, and I'm not sure my own wife has my back, that's a dangerous place.
Yeah.
It's a dangerous place because as a human, you're going to want that relationship. You naturally are going to crave that.
It's
And
good to get a compliment. It feels nice. I'm sure it raises the levels in all of those hormones and neurotransmitters that say, "Oh, this feels good." Having someone's approval or hearing a compliment, that's how we're made to function. So if it's those things are being deposited by someone else other than your spouse, it can be easy to feel like, I'm kind of celebrated in different areas, in different arenas with others more than my spouse celebrates me.
even if you had my back, if you don't communicate that to me regularly, I'm going to wonder. And I was saying that about the church because we have only been pastoring for what, 3 years?
4.
4 years.
But who's counting?
We haven't been pastoring very long. And I'm saying that because I okay, this might sound a little wrong, but if you're a sister in the church and you're letting your pastor know, let's say it's at this church, so it applies to me. You're letting me know, hey, I'm going to support your vision as a pastor. I mean, thank God for that. I'm not saying to be rebellious and don't back up your pastor. If you're listening to this and you don't come to this church and this applies to you, let your pastor know you're part of the vision. But before you even do that, make sure your husband knows. Because before we were pastoring, I knew without a shadow of a doubt, you are going to back up the vision of the pastor of the church where we were at, period.
Yes.
Whether it was a small group leader or whatever. But that never made me insecure. I never felt like I had to compete because I also knew, well, she's got my back.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's so important. And I hope that's not one of the reasons why there's statistically, not in this church, I don't think so. Statistically, husbands don't want to go to church. And maybe that has something to do with it, maybe not. But your marriage has to be intact because it really is not only the foundation, but it's the launching pad for your ministry. And you might think, well, we don't need ministry. Yes, you do, because you need the vasopressin.
Well, if for nothing else, for your children, for your own quality of life, for your own, besides salvation and quality of salvation, what kind of life do you want to live before you finally reach your eternal reward? I don't think that, while I'm very grateful for my salvation and the hope that I will be in heaven one day, I want to do everything I can now to ensure that, but also to reap every benefit that God has for me, for us, for our children, for our church, for whoever we come into contact with
Now,
now.
and I'm glad that I feel the support from you. If I didn't, speaking from the perspective of a man, I personally like it. It does more for me when you tell me things like, I got your back. I respect you. That does more for me than saying I love you.
Yeah,
As a man.
and that's a common thing. I've read that in a lot of different marital books, some Christian, some more psychology based. And that's how I believe God made the man. That's something that he responds to is respect in behavior towards him and words towards him and how you speak about him, how you speak to him, versus all the lovey-dovey stuff that women tend to crave and want. Men are just created to respond differently to respect.
Right. And we live in a culture that there's feminism on the rise. And I'm not saying, like, I'm not a chauvinist. I don't think I'm better. I don't think males are better. But from a biblical view, Adam was created first.
Mm-hmm.
There's an order. It's God, Christ, man, woman. Not to say that is the order of value, but
Mm-hmm.
that's the order of creation. And so in the home, it's the same thing. It's
Yes.
man then woman. And if everybody's in their place, beginning with God, who's first, beginning with the spiritual things, which is why, by the way, marriage is gonna be super super tough, in my opinion, if one of them is not serving God. If that's your situation, I'm not saying you're not in God's will. I'm just saying it. It's very. I get it. It's very difficult, even when both of them are serving the Lord, because they're like God's the anchor. When I'm drifting off, God anchors me, and He doesn't allow me to drift off in that sense. But in the culture and the day we live, with the rising of feminism and the voices, I think that there's two extremes to this. There's one extreme that says, don't even talk, right? What did Albert Einstein say? Albert Einstein said, if you want to stay married to me, you bring my meals to my room and don't expect a conversation. We're not talking unless I initiate the conversation, and don't expect physical intimacy from me. And that's why Einstein's first wife left him. So there's two extremes to this. You can't be on the radical where you're a doormat, but
Right.
you can't be on the other side where we lose the order that God set in place.
Yes. And I think that part of the culture with feminism in mind is it kind of became something that was, pro woman and pro her becoming, a little more independent of the man and doing for herself. But it kind of turned into like man bashing and forgetting the value that men bring, that husbands bring, and kind of dismissing that. And I think that that's kind of where sometimes if it seeps into marriage, we forget that this was someone that we loved enough to marry. And we didn't just love them, we respected them, because who in their right mind would marry someone that they can't respect, that they just look down on? Why would you proceed in marrying someone like that? So I believe that in this dating stage, you develop respect, you develop honor and love for your man. But if it's not something that you actively work on, because sometimes it is work to want to give respectful responses, give honoring responses, act honorably towards your husband. If there's, seasons that were very tough and maybe he mishandled something, but that's why we condition ourselves to find something to celebrate in your spouse. And this is for men and women. But even with someone that doesn't serve God, let's say it's the male that's not serving God, or maybe he strayed from God, I believe there's always something to celebrate about someone. There's always one good thing. There's something you can say. If nothing else, you can talk about their appearance, something they're wearing, words they chose. I do not believe that there's any one person on this earth that you can't find something to celebrate about them and grow from there. But it's much more vital in a relationship to find a point to celebrate about your spouse.
It does so much for me when you celebrate me. What did Gordon Winslow tell us? What you don't celebrate,
Will exit your life.
it'll exit your life.
Yes.
Celebrate your spouse. It's our human nature to point out the negative
Yes.
and nag. And that just doesn't work.
No.
It takes work to stay in love. Every relationship, even your relationship with God,
Hmm.
it takes work. Your relationship with your children, there's effort, and you've got to be intentional. And sometimes in marriage, it's almost like, oh, they're not going to leave me. Where are they going to go? Once you go down that path, one thing will always lead to another. And eventually you get to a place where you're no longer building your marriage, it's on maintenance mode. And there's, you know, I, this is, the more I get to know people, sometimes the less I like them. And like in my relationship with God, the longer I've been living for God, the more I love God. My relationship with God is stronger today than it was 16 years ago. And I loved God when I got saved, but it was all oxytocin, it was all dopamine. Today, being married to you for 14 years, I love you so much more today than when we said I do. But when we said I do, I loved you. A lot of it was oxytocin, a lot of it was dopamine.
It's almost like I loved you as much as I possibly could, having known you for that amount of time and having known myself for that amount of time, having experienced love up to that point in time. And it's only grown.
Right? You said as long as you've known yourself.
Yes.
Let's talk about that. Because I notice a lot of times spouses can really, really know the other partner, their partner, the other person in the marriage, but they're not aware of how they're actually contributing to that situation. And in marriage, I've learned a lot about you, but I've learned a lot about myself. Just like living for God, I've learned a lot about the Lord, but I've learned a lot about myself. And that's the other side of it. You're going to learn your spouse, but I hope that you are also interested in learning you, because self awareness, I mean, if there's a problem in our marriage, I'm half of it because I'm half of the marriage. I mean, I'm being very general, but generally speaking, if we have a problem, I'm probably half of the problem. I'm 50% of that equation. Having self awareness can be a lifesaver.
So I think that from experience within my own marriage, from experience with others, I have seen that if your marriage is experiencing a chronic problem, and chronic is kind of like long term versus something that happened one time, or it's like not habitual, um, there's a chronic problem, and one spouse or both spouses are regularly venting either to their spouse or to others about their spouse and this problem, this chronic problem, even if it's really a one sided issue that one spouse is having or showing, I believe that having self awareness, knowing you, knowing, okay, I know me, I know that I can help the situation. I know that me harping on him about the same thing is counterproductive. I know that me venting about it again and again and again can only go so far. I do get venting is therapeutic, but there comes a limit where how you have to consider, how can I be a part of the solution? And sometimes it's choosing to not do things such as, I don't have to nag him about that today. I don't have to acknowledge it by my facial expressions, my reactions, my words, even my thoughts. I can choose today, or at least in this moment, to forego pointing out that weak point and turn it into, you know what? I noticed today you did an X, Y, and Z. And just that little point of changing from, instead of making this a him problem, I'm going to say I'm part of this marriage, so I'm part of the problem too. And I can be aware enough to know my words can change the culture of our marriage. I think that type of self awareness is so important to the quality of your marriage. It's kind of like choosing to be mature and be humble instead of pointing out, look, I have rights in a marriage. I want to be loved. I deserve love. I deserve to feel wanted. It's stepping outside of that and saying, you know what? If you have a problem with something, I'm here to help mend things. I'm not here to attack you. I'm not here to diagnose you. I'm not here to bash you. I'm not here to keep reminding you about it. I'm here to help go and meet somewhere and end up on the other side of it. but that just can't happen because walls are brought in by constant nagging or constant just responding and reacting to feelings of being unwanted or unappreciated or unnoticed.
Being self-aware is so important because if you're not aware of how you're communicating, even if you're right, if
Yeah.
I feel like you're always attacking me, I'm going to want to avoid.
Yeah.
Why would I want why would I want to have conversations with someone that I feel like that's all they want to do?
Because then you come into the room, and if I've conditioned you to believing I'm just going to beat you up, you come into a room and you see, oh, wait, do I want to go in there to get beat up right now? I actually don't. I'd rather not. So then it becomes like an avoidant relationship because neither party decided to be self aware, use self awareness, and become part of the solution.
Every marriage has elephants. Those elephants need to be addressed. There's an elephant in the room for every marriage. And we've had some hard conversations. I mean, hard,
Yes.
tough conversations. And we'll do another podcast on it, but we've raised 4 children. One of them, stepchild, from my view, your biological daughter. And we've been through a lot. And I feel like the easier thing to do is to avoid conversations. But the reason why we've been able to have them is because before we had them, I knew you have my back. And that's the thing. I don't think we can even go there until I feel secure enough. You're not going to weaponize anything I tell you. You're not going to turn it around and
Yeah.
throw it in my face. You're not going to make fun of me. You're not going to belittle me
Yes.
because those things would be disrespectful.
And this is mutual. I think like where this conversation is going is very mindful of how the man in the marriage will feel. And I think that's important because he is the leader. He's going to set the tone a lot of the time for ministry, for your family, for your marriage. But on the other hand, um, everything that he's saying applies to the woman. I need to know that my husband has my back. I need to know that he's not going to weaponize the vulnerable moments that we have together when I'm expressing, hey, I feel this. Hey, I feel insecure. Hey, all of these things and all of these examples. I need to know that he is safe to talk to. And sometimes that is done in in the dark when we're alone and it's just us and I'm like, "Hey, can we just turn the lights off for this conversation because I feel like I might cry and I don't want those tears to get in the way of the message that I'm trying to get across."
Right.
And I think that us having those hard conversations have really united us, have reminded us of our common goals in every area of our life, from finances to children to ministry to our marriage. Um, I think that just being willing to have those hard conversations that uncover uncomfortable things within yourself, but knowing, oh, I can be real with you. I can be very vulnerable, and you're still gonna love me, and we're gonna feel even closer after this. I think that that is how you have a great and thriving marriage, and it's a continual thing. It's something that you'll have to do for the rest of your life, and it does get easier. I think once you do something enough, it does get easier.
Yeah. It was hard. I feel like yes, it's easier to have those hard talks with you today than it was 10 years ago. You know, if you don't have self awareness and you're not aware of how you're coming off to your spouse, you could be thinking, I'm trying to help her, I'm trying to help him, but your method is very aggressive. And I feel like one of the reasons why we've been able to blossom and produce fruit and have a great marriage is because neither one of us dominated the other one. If I
Yeah,
if I dominated you, and I could even use scripture to do it. If I dominate you, you would never feel that security. And
right.
without security, you'll never even want to be yourself.
Yeah.
You can't even have your own thoughts because you would always want to tell me what you think I want you to say.
Yeah. Or or probably what I would be more likely to do if I felt dominated, I would likely be very aggressive and feel like actually this isn't the 1920s. You can't get away with that.
Right.
I have a voice and I'll show you. I'll let you hear that voice, which is counterproductive, but
Yeah.
um
That would be your fight or flight response,
right.
though. Not everyone's.
Yes,
Yeah. You're going to let me know.
I will.
Yeah. You're Mexican.
I am. I'm Mexican, and that's part of why I can express myself the way I do. However, I also know that God gave me a voice. God put in me the ability to communicate, to express what I believe is right, to express if I feel something is off. I think that sometimes in church, it can be taboo to ask questions. I don't agree with that culture. I think that no question is off limits. It's all dependent on the context, who's around, the spirit in which you do it. So I have that in mind, and I think that I can approach you and ask anything and discuss anything because you and I are both aware that it's not coming from a place of malice or some place unloving.
Right. You've got to have those hard conversations. But before you have them, you got to make sure there's security. And I want that. I think any man wants that. They want their wife to grow. And the only way that's going to happen is if I reassure you and I help you find that place where you're not just like a parrot for me, but you are you and you're unique. You don't have to try and tell me what I want to hear. I actually want a partner, a spouse that brings a totally different perspective and view. That's what makes, the differences, the diversity in that. God, you're supposed to think with the right side of your brain. I'm supposed to think with the left side of my brain. And that's how marriages can be and have the potential to be so powerful, is if we capitalize on that. But if we're not careful, that becomes our detriment. It destroys us.
I think on that same note, I was thinking about something recently, and I told my husband, I love that being your wife, I learned also being a nurse really helped this, but I've been a wife to my husband longer than I've been a nurse. I think that having fights, heated arguments, we, okay,
I don't know what you're talking about.
I
I'm just kidding.
would know that I felt something, but I didn't know how to express it. I didn't know how to make it evident that there was a problem. And my husband would usually say something like, bring it up objectively. What are the facts? What happened? What was the scenario? Give me an example. So it caused us to write things down. And I struggled with subjective versus objective, because subjective is me feeling and experiencing something that can't really be proven, but objectively it's things that can be witnessed, or they're experienced but they're documented. And so
Gotcha.
I couldn't bridge that gap, but being married to him, I realized, wow, I can think more objectively. And I feel like that's helped with my walk with God, because it became something that was, I felt like serving God that week, or I felt like going to church, or I felt like doing right. And it became more of knowing that you have to do something, you have to do the right thing. You bring objective information. Like, would it make sense for me to stay home from church because I feel upset, or we had an argument? And talking to myself, talking through that, I'm like, no, it's I'm in my feelings right now. Stop. go. And sometimes I got to do that and look myself in the mirror literally and say, listen, girl, you're going to do it. You're going to stop whining. You're not going to do this. You're going to do that.
There's times where we had such heated conversations, disagreements, fights. We had to bring in a third party.
Yes.
And for us, I'm not going to go and bring my homie that is going to side with me, right? So we had to find someone that was objective, neutral, level-headed, that we both agreed on, and that happened to be JR.
Yes.
JR has sat at the table with us and listened to us on more than one occasion have intense conversations, and it had to be someone who had the guts to check either one of us, and of course we gave them permission, and that was so helpful.
Yes.
I don't know if that's taboo, but that was it was so good for us.
It was. I think that it was very helpful for that time in our lives, and I rely heavily on trying to find the right verbiage, and I do that by therapy. I am in therapy, and I speak to my therapist. She's an apostolic Pentecostal LMFT, and I tell her, I could really benefit from learning some of the verbiage because I know what I feel. I don't want to express it all the time. But sometimes what we feel is showing something at the root level. And so she has brought to me objective things, and I'm able to have conversations that can take care of the root of the issue, or I can explore myself and realize, why am I reacting this way? Why am I responding this way? Why am I feeling this way? In order to benefit the relationships and the roles that I serve. And you brought up taboo, and I wanted to say that being in therapy, I think while you're in church, especially the Apostolic Pentecostal denomination, has been taboo.
Right.
And I'm not one to shy away from taboo topics. I think that anyone that asks me something, I'm willing to answer the question, because I'm okay with being transparent. I'm okay with looking like I don't have it all together, like I don't have all the answers, because I don't. And I'm okay with sharing that. I'm okay with saying, I don't know, but I'll ask. I'll try to find out. And if I don't, hey, we're just going to have to pray and ask God and figure it out. If you hear from God before I do, let me know. And I think that that's okay. And that's how people really get helped. Because I don't sit here as a pastor's wife that's been through it all and experienced it all and has all the answers and has it all together. I don't. And I'm okay with that. Right. I'm okay with where I'm at and who I am, and saying, you know what, I use a therapist because I need that. I need to work through some things. I want to do it the right way. And I am in therapy to give a better experience to the people that I have relationships with in my life.
Yeah, it is a taboo. I don't know why, but it's a tool.
It's a tool.
It's a resource that God gives us.
Yes.
Right? I mean, Job had 4 therapists. They weren't good ones, but I think it's so healthy to have that. And I would like to say that I can see the effects of it. It's been so good. You got to learn how to cope. And if you can benefit from a therapist, do it. Because if you don't learn how to cope in a healthy way, you will cope.
Yeah.
You know what I've noticed, and I don't even know what time we're at, but let me in Proverbs, Solomon says there are rich people that look poor, but there's people that are poor but they look really rich. And I'm gonna stretch it just a little bit to make an analogy and connect here, but why would rich people dress in a way or live in a way that's not flashy? And which is true. There's a lot of wealthy people that don't drive new cars, and they'll say that's how I became wealthy. And then there's people that probably shouldn't have a car payment that have car payments. And I'm going to stretch that to this, because if you don't learn how to cope with internal issues, the natural thing for a human to do is have an external coping mechanism, and it's usually social media, where we're going to make it look like we have a great relationship. You walk in our house and you're going to see all kinds of pictures of us. You go to social media and it's going to look like everything is so good. That could be your coping mechanism because you're trying to avoid the internal issues that are going on. For example, when Moses came down from Mount Sinai, he had his face all shiny, but he was losing it. He was losing the glory. He was losing the glow. So he put a rag on his face so nobody can see the glory is actually fading. And that's what Paul alludes to in the New Testament. And sometimes when their glory is fading in a marriage, we have to hang a rag to hide it from people so they don't know that there could be something fading. If you're not careful, you might have certain coping mechanisms such as shopping, such as traveling, expensive things,
Or excessive in
excessive things
nature.
that will add to your problem. Because now, not
Yes.
only do you not get along with your spouse, now you're broke and in debt because you decided to go to Monterey for 3 days when you shouldn't have.
I
Because
love Monterey, by the way.
yes, I just threw that out there because you love. But like when I notice you really want to go to Monterey over and over and over, I usually know, oh, that's a sign. Okay,
What's a sign of?
it's a sign that we probably need to have a very good conversation because you're probably overloaded. And it could be school, it could be our marriage, it could be kids, it could be whatever.
It's likely a combination.
Yes, those combos are deadly.
Yeah.
And that's usually how they come
Yeah.
too. They come like that. And in marriages, and this could be a totally different podcast, finances is a big thing. If you're not disciplined with your finances, in the moment, I might say, okay, let's go. But when we're broke and we got bills to pay, I'm going to blame you. I'm going to say, you wanted that Gucci purse or whatever it is. You wanted to travel, and it will come up later. So you've got to have that self awareness to know, okay, am I doing this because I don't know how to cope and I don't know how to have hard conversations? Is this
A band-aid?
a band-aid? Am I reacting? And if you're not careful, your marriage will be full of events that will make it seem like, wow, they have a really good life together. But it could be just a lot of band-aids
Mhm.
that will lead to more problems if you're struggling financially.
That's very true.
I don't know if that was too much of a stretch, but when
I think the symptoms always show,
yes,
and we get tied up in symptom management versus getting to the root cause
You're such a
of
nurse.
a condition.
you're such a nurse.
I wrote a couple papers on this, but in the nursing realm, not in marriage.
Don't be chasing symptoms. If you fix
or
the
masking
root,
symptoms.
masking symptoms. If you address the root, you don't have to deal with the symptoms.
Yes, and the problem is root work. I don't know anything about working with outdoor stuff. I can't even think of the word, but the manual
Landscaping?
labor, landscaping. I know that it's much easier to leave the stump in the ground. We had one for a long time in our front yard. It's very expensive and more time consuming to get the roots out. Just like in marriage, it is so much more work. It's overwhelming sometimes to get to the root of things, but the rewards far outweigh any work, all of the work, the amount of work, the time put into it if you take care of the roots.
It's so worth it. It feels so much better. And when you do it one time, you actually are proud of yourself. What's that word you used the other day?
So I don't remember where I got this from, but I want to say it was from Dr. Laura Schlesinger, and it was, I recommend a book to every single woman. And whether they're married already or they are working on getting married, it's called The Proper Care and Feeding of Husbands. I got the part two. It's called The Proper Care and Feeding of Husbands and Marriages. And it has so many points. So she is, I know she's an LMFT, a licensed and marriage family therapist. Uh I don't remember her other degrees. I'm sure she's some type of psychotherapist, psychologist. I don't know. She's different things. But one thing that I remember from her book is that we have to, sometimes someone that has self-esteem or they are more prone to have insecure moments or just insecurities, is that we have to kind of build like a rapport with ourselves where I did well in something and it boosted my self-esteem. And if we can continually do this, even to on a small level, whether it's practical or spiritual in your marriage or just for yourself, um, it actually boosts your self esteem. It gives you credit towards yourself. When you're a person that has high self esteem because you know you showed up to do the work, you know you've put in the work, you know that it's basically a lot of positive self talk because you did the work. It helps you to be a more palatable person, a more palatable spouse.
Because your relationship with you affects your relationship with me.
Yes.
And when you dig these roots out, when you do one hard thing, you know, like if you're a newlywed, right? The first 5 years, right, is going to be a lot of work. But after your first big stump that you get out of your heart, oh, it's like someone living for God. You overcome your first big trial, it does
Yes.
something for you. Because I'm not saying that we preach like a humanistic gospel, but to a degree, of course, we have faith in God, but to a degree, you've got to have faith in yourself too. To a
Yes.
degree, you've got to believe that these promises apply to you. Otherwise, you'll believe, oh, it can work for you, and everybody else except me, right?
Yes.
And that's the syndrome. That's the
It's
mentality.
having an understanding of who you are in God, understanding and knowing your value, even if it's not at its full capacity and where it can be, just having enough for that time, for that day to know that, you know what, I am who God says I am. I can do hard things and I've done it before. And even when I made mistakes, I feel like one of the greatest things that's happened in my life is feeling like I let God down just through poor decision making in, here and there. And God still showed up for me. God still loved me. God provided for me. God blessed me. God heard my prayers. That blew me away. That it wasn't contingent upon my performance or my prayer life. I don't want to dismiss that, but I'm aware enough to know God sees more than what I can give him and what I am and who I am. And he still loves me. And I feel like that, knowing that, built my confidence in continuing to serve God. Because when I hit a hard season and I think, I don't know how I'm going to get through this, I don't know if I'm built for this, I don't know if I can act right with all of these stressors going on at the same time, I can think, you know what, God, you've done it before. You've helped me before, and I can make mistakes. I feel like that's really important in marriage and in serving God.
Absolutely.
We have an understanding. We tell our kids all the time when we have serious talks or just throughout the day. I'll ask them, hey, are you guys allowed to make mistakes? And they say, yeah.
Absolutely.
Do your parents let you make mistakes? Yeah. Does God let you make mistakes? Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely. And there's a security that comes knowing you're not my enemy. You're not going to
Yes.
shame me. And as we tackle these hard things one at a time, after your first one, you're going to believe in yourself a little bit more and you're
Right.
going to say, I could do this. And then it
Yes.
becomes so much easier. It's enjoyable, even. And that's kind of weird to say, but certain processes. You know, people used to say all the time, enjoy the process, enjoy the process. I never understood that too much. Now I kind of understand it.
You have to enjoy the process, because if you don't learn to, life is just going to hand you processes. I thought about something someone told me recently. I don't even remember, but it had something to do with um like going through something hard. And sometimes it's hard to want to show up and be a mother, be a father, be a pastor's wife, go to work. It's hard to show up when things are not looking too good. When you're not feeling it, when you're thinking, I would rather be at home in bed and not have to face just cooking for the kids right now, going to work, dealing with coworkers or customers or patients. But life will always life. Like, there is no point in thinking, okay, I'm going to have it all together when I'm ready. I'm not ready yet. Life keeps happening. Life will continue to happen. It doesn't slow down for anybody. And we have to learn to show up for our spouses, for our families, show up as a child of God with mistakes.
Flawed and everything.
Yes, with flaws. But knowing, if I don't do this now, when am I going to start showing up? If I wait for my spouse to become better in this area, when will I take ownership of my part in my hand in this marriage, in my own role as a wife? So show up tired, show up weak, show up flawed. Just show it. Show up. God, when you do your part, God more than does his part.
Absolutely.
It's God's turn, then it's your turn.
Woo.
Then it's God's turn again, then it's your turn.
That's so good. That was so good. That was a handful. That was a mouthful. That was an earful. I'm gonna cut it here. This was a great, great conversation. We'll have another one.
All right.
Thank you guys for joining us for another episode of Redemption Podcast. We pray that you continue to be blessed and prosper even as your soul prospers. Jesus said, when you see these things beginning to happen, lift up your head, look up, for your redemption draws nigh. I'm Tom Saturn.
And I'm Heather Saturn.
God bless you guys. We love you guys. We'll catch you next time.